Hi, I'm Jennifer Johnson. I'm here with Rick Rusaw. I'm one of the contributing editors for Christian Standard magazine, and I also have the opportunity to write for the magazine sometimes. And today I'm so excited to talk with my friend Rick. We're going to talk about his new book, and I might even sneak in a question about what you're talking about tomorrow. I don't know, maybe a sneak peek. So Rick is the senior pastor at Lifebridge Christian Church in Longmont. It's Lifebridge Christian?
Lifebridge,
okay. And in Longmont, Colorado. And he's the author of several books, including Externally Focused Church and some others, in his new book called Neighboring.
Neighboring
What's
Church,
the subtitle?
Getting better at what Jesus said mattered most.
And those two things are loving God and loving your neighbor.
Loving your neighbor.
So
like your real neighbor, like the one next door
the one
to
next
you.
door that plays his music too loud and sometimes his dog poops in your yard.
That craps in your yard, exactly.
I had one of those neighbors, right. So tell us how you're defining neighboring in the book. It's not just living next to somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're trying to communicate is that there's a big culture shift going on. There's a climate shift happening with the church, and everybody's trying to struggle with what's next, what do we do? And I think there's this challenge for us to go from what we've been doing corporately and trying to get people to live it out individually. And so for us, I hate to use the words, but it's moving from missional to incarnational. I think both words have been hijacked. But and so what if people actually could just love God and love their neighbor? What if we actually help them do that? So, we talk about it in terms of, what if we get the bar so low that people can't get under it? That like whether you're 9 or 90, you could neighbor, you could love another person, you could try to live with knowing who they are, being interested in them, those kinds of things. So.
Well, one of the things you talk about in your book is the word organic, and that's another word that's been co-opted and overused. And sometimes when people talk about their church being organic, they mean we're just going to hang out, we're not going to have any plan, the Holy Spirit's going to move, it's just going to happen, which maybe will happen sometimes. But really, just like you talk about, an organic farmer has very strong systems, practices. There's a reason that he has a good crop.
We live in Boulder. So, Boulder has like the organic capital of the world, right? So we have all that. And back before the financial collapse, there were a lot of Denver wealthy people going out and buying small farms. And they would buy these farms, and then the financial collapse came and they all went under. And you can go see some real organic farms. The roofs are off, they're boarded up, weeds everywhere, fences are down. The organic food that gets served in Boulder comes from some of the most impressive operations you'll ever see. If what they mean is, if my friends who say let's be more organic, let's get the pesticides out, let's get all the junk out we've put in, let's get out the artificial programs we've placed on, let's get rid of the show on the weekend for more authenticity. I'm on that. But that's hard work. And that doesn't mean we quit planning. It doesn't mean we're not strategic. Doesn't mean we aren't helping people engage. Because if organic's going to work, then something's got to go on in the lives of people. They just aren't going to wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be a Christ follower who's going to make a difference with my life. That generally doesn't happen.
Right. Just like those organic farmers who are producing high quality stuff,
100%.
They're not backing into that. That's very much intentional. They're making choices that are facilitating that farm. So what are some of the practices or values that a church needs to adopt to do neighboring well?
I think one of the things is, so we can't do everything. And I'm not an anti-gather guy. In fact, I think you got to gather. I think the Bible invites us to gather. I think gathering matters. We've said, well, what if we put as much emphasis on scattering as we did on gathering? And then how are we going to scatter? And rather than looking at programs we could scatter or moving small groups out or whatever that was, we've said, what if we actually invited our people to love their neighbor, to know the 8 neighbors around them, to know their hopes and hurts and dreams, to maybe know their name. We do this thing from Dave Runyon that we call it the sheet of shame. He hates that. It's a neighboring map. And first time I did it, I couldn't name any of my neighbors. I'd lived there for a dozen years.
I can name one.
Yeah. We're good at cocooning today. That's what researchers call it. We close the garage door, we put our earbuds in when we're walking. And we've just said, be more intentional in your neighborhood. Pay attention to your neighbors. We give them 4 practices. We say you ought to stay connected, get to know who they are, pray for them. Don't pray for them to become Christians, although we hope they might someday. We're not making them a project, though. No one wants to be a project. Pray for them because you're a Christian. You ought to just be praying for them and pray specifically, and you can't do that if you don't know their hopes and hurts and dreams. And then play, engage them, have them over for dinner, go over to their house for dinner, hang out, do a barbecue, and eventually you're going to get a chance to talk about what matters for you, tell your story of grace. And nobody, we can't miss out on that. everybody could do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I love about your website, which is theneighboringchurch.com,
Right.
is that you make the point that not every person is gifted in all 5 of those equally.
Right.
So like, I know for myself, and I forget which one of the 5 that it was that you just named, but the one that is like talking about faith, sharing about the Bible, that's one that's like more in my wheelhouse.
Yep.
But there's other people that are really great at the play.
Yeah.
They're really great at the block party. You know, that's not my thing. I'm the person who's over in the corner texting
I'm
at the
kind of
block
with
party.
you.
Right?
No one would ever get invited to my house if it were up to me.
Right.
So.
But so there's a room for every skill set, there's room for every gift mix. We all have a part to play. We don't have to like single-handedly
Right.
change our neighborhood,
Right.
but we can all do something.
Right, and I think it's being intentional of love our neighbor just because we're commanded to love our neighbor.
Right.
Not because they're a project, not because we're going to see attendance grow at church because we did this, but we actually are just invited to love God and love our neighbors. So we've been saying, what would happen if you got a little better today at that than you were yesterday? What's that look like for you?
Well, and you know, as I think about it, neighbor is one of those words that we kind of co-opt because it's easy to say love your neighbor. It's easy to read that command from Jesus and be like, oh, that just means just generally kind of love people. No, it's a lot harder when, as we said, it's that guy next door who's doing something annoying, or even the people next door who are nice.
It's a lot easier to love people in the world generally than
right.
it is to love someone specifically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus
right.
issues shift. You know, so culturally we're facing big deal issues, and I can get on social media and give my opinions and do all we do when about an issue, but when it's my neighbor that has that issue, it changes how I interact with it. Maybe not change how I feel about it,
Right.
but it certainly changes how I engage it. So just as if it were a family member,
Right.
it changes how I engage whatever issue that is a big deal issue at the moment.
So how is this changing Lifebridge?
You know, I'm not sure. At this point, we might have ruined the church. I'm not exactly positive because we kind of pulled out some program stuff and we've got a little less structure now.
Well, you talk about it's not about having no wineskins, it's new wineskins,
Yeah.
but sometimes that's an evolution.
Yeah, and it's moving the wine from the old into the new that's been a bit of a challenge. And but what we're seeing is we actually think we've gotten to the place now where people are going, hey, we're in, we believe, what do we do now?
Yeah.
So now we're actually trying to figure out how do we create handles and on-ramps and steps for people to take to do this that are credible, not just another, we don't want this is like the unprogrammed.
Right.
You know, so.
Right, which is why people confuse it with organic in the sense of completely unplanned, but there actually is some strategy to
and it's trying to help people do that. So I think our folks would like, you know, huck up their left lung if we did another sermon series on it right now. But we are watching them start to do it.
That's good.
So,
Yeah. So I'm totally changing the subject.
Yeah.
You're going to speak here on Thursday morning.
Sure.
Which you don't have to tell us the whole message, but what story from John are you going to be sharing about?
So I kind of got a softball one. Lazarus being raised from the dead.
Oh, yeah.
Except there's a lot going on in chapter 11. That's what I'm going to deal with is you know, the spoiler alert is Lazarus does come back from, you know, dead. But that can't be the whole story. There's a lot going on in there. So I'm going to talk about what keeps you from a better story. What is it that's keeping us from a better story? And then a cheater piece for me is I think when we get to the graveside, I think that's a picture of the church. Jesus invites the people to move the stone. He didn't need their help. He could have done it. They could do that, though. It was in their ability to do that. And then he calls them out of the grave. They couldn't do that. That's only his job.
And then they unwrap.
And then they get the dead stuff, get the stink of death off his life. Well, that looks like the church to me. Yeah. We move some rocks for people so they can hear God in their life, and then we spend the rest of the time helping them, remind them they don't live at the cemetery.
That's so good. You know, that's the last time in Scripture that we hear about Lazarus, right?
Never again.
Which I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
We don't hear about him at the crucifixion.
Yeah.
We don't hear about him at Jesus' resurrection.
We don't see him like, you know, high-fiving everybody going down the street. We get nothing,
right.
You know. But I wonder what it would be like to live like Lazarus did after that. So it'd be kind of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak
fun.
with us. I know
Always
you've
good
got
to
a busy
see.
week. The Neighboring Church is out on August 2nd.
It is.
And theneighboringchurch.com. And I think this could really revolutionize your church if you wanted to take a baby step.
And pre-order is right now cheaper than you'll ever get it.
There you go. See, it's the perfect time. So thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Jen.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.